I'll give everyone a 30-second just to get their cameras on and to finish joining us, and then we'll get right underway. All right, I think we can probably start. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Robert Menzies, and I am the CAMA National Chairperson. I would like to start by thanking all of you for participating in this brainstorm session. This is the first that CAMA has done. This is an excellent example of the Canadian agri-marketing industry coming together to problem solve and offer individual expertise for the betterment of all of us. I'd also like to acknowledge Glacier Farm Media in their financial support of this event, much greatly appreciated. This brainstorm session will be recorded and it will be emailed out to participants after the event. As one of our number one focuses for CAMA is to always offer value in the business of agriculture and how our members can best engage and build relationships with farmers. As the industry continues to pivot in how we engage farmers, many of us need to figure out how we adapt or replace our beloved farmer trade shows and how we can best use virtual trade shows now and into the future. So in response, CAMA developed a two-pronged approach to support you, our members. The first was an industry survey, which was sent out to members, industry contacts, and a handful of farmers. It's from your insight that once analyzed, provided the foundation for the second prong, which is this National Brainstorm working session. Some members were quite positive and glass half full in your comments, while many were not. So to set the stage for this National Industry Virtual Brainstorm, we would like to provide a few disclaimers. Virtual will never replace in-person. The reality is that there is likely another year in front of us where many shows will not return to the traditional in-person format. And even once they do return, there will likely always be a virtual component, what we're calling hybrid shows. We're going to have to adapt as agri-marketers, and those that don't will see competitors who do embrace virtual steal that market share. We're not debating one over the other today, rather what are the opportunities and benefits of virtual and how to incorporate them into our marketing mix. Virtual is just another opportunity to connect with customers and prospective customers. Some of us participating today in this virtual brainstorm are 100% against virtual shows and the opportunities they may offer. We believe that working with farmers should only ever be one-on-one, in person, and very reliant on personal relationship. We believe that the services and products we offer need to be seen and touched. And we believe farmers don't want virtual shows, that they simply won't go, or the lack of true engagement won't be a positive experience for either party. So this is what we're going to explore today over the next 85 minutes. To help facilitate a great conversation that yields actions for agribusinesses, show organizers, and farmers, I've asked two colleagues to join us. Amanda Meyer is the Canadian Marketing Manager for Farmers Business Network, and Lauren Davis is the Marketing Communications Manager for a little agribusiness you might know called Bayer. Both Amanda and Lauren work with their teams who are responsible for both the physical and virtual trade shows that their companies attend. They both had a digital presence last year and are planning to build on their learnings for this year and for the years to come. The three of us may be responsible to help ensure a worthwhile experience today. However, be clear, we do not have the answers. But as an industry, including the farmers, we will be better off after this session. On that note, not sure if any of you have participated in a virtual brainstorm before. This is the first for CAMA, and so we've created some best practices to ensure that everyone has the opportunity to participate. First off, please keep yourself muted while not speaking. Please have your camera on. A virtual brainstorm is going to be difficult as it is. If we're only looking at black boxes, it's going to be that much harder. At the bottom of your window in the control panel, you should see the icon titled Reactions. There you can raise your hand if you have a comment or question. Either myself, Amanda, or Lauren will call on you. Please keep your comments concise and on topic so we can hear from as many people as possible. If you're hearing things you like, again, under the reactions, give it a thumbs up. If you don't like what you're hearing, there is no thumbs down icon, but we're going to use the open mouth emoji for that reaction. Of course, you can put a comment or question in the chat function. We've also got some poll questions prepped that we'll be asking you throughout the session. Okay, so I want to jump in into our first poll. Mary's behind the scenes as per usual, so she's going to be showing us some polls and then the results. So you told us in our survey that for virtual shows to be successful, they need to provide a number of things to farmers. So poll number 1. What's the number 1 reason farmers go to a show, in person or otherwise? We'll give you 30 seconds to select your answer. So as soon as we got those results in, Mary, if you can put them up on screen, there they are. All right, I'm going to turn this over to Amanda. Amanda, again, is from Farmers Business Network and my co-host today. So she's going to walk us through the what we're seeing here for results.
Okay, so I have to say I'm not surprised. I also chose the exploring and learning aspect. I think this makes sense for what we expected to see. Lauren, do you have any comments? Were you surprised by this?
No, I would concur with the group. You know, although I'm not a farmer today, I did farm several years ago, and have spent a few years working trade show booths in the wintertime. And you know, when I put my farmer hat on, I really think that I would go to a show with the hopes of learning new ideas and challenging my current farming practices and hopefully bringing those opportunities and ideas back to my farm. And I did rate number 2 as probably my second choice. And you know, I think a lot of farmers do enjoy getting out and networking with some colleagues or old friends that they haven't seen, and you know, there might only be 2 or 3 shows that they would do that in a year. So yeah, I would say 1 would be my first choice and 2 would be my second. But maybe, you know, maybe that answer might be different for farmers if they were first starting out in their career or seasoned veterans. So pass it back to you, Amanda, to explore further.
Yeah, so I agree. And I agree with Ed's comments in the chat box. So we do have a few farmers here, and I would like to ask some of our farmers what they think, because really what we want and what we want to do is best serve our farmers. So if I could ask Henry Voss, what are your thoughts? Why do you go to a trade show?
Sure. The primary reason that I go to trade shows is to explore and learn. However, a side benefit of that is the relationships, the chance to meet other colleagues, other people in the business, people I've heard of, people I even went to university with. That is, and winds up consuming probably half of my time at a trade show is those relationships that I like to renew. So the first primary reason to go is explore and learn, but very, very quickly behind that is the relationship side of trade shows.
Very good. Yeah, I agree. Like, even when we first started this call, we had some comments. Oh, it's nice to see some friendly faces. To be honest, some colleagues I don't connect with until I'm at a trade show. So it's definitely a big impact piece. Kurt, and I'm hoping I'm going to say your last name right, Prince. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Do you have any comments as a farmer? Why you go to a trade show?
No, I don't think I have anything to add. Henry nailed it.
Wonderful. We have one other farmer on the call, so I would like to get Roberta's opinion as well.
Oh, maybe I'll put on my camera just so you can see me. Rural internet, you gotta love it. I think Henry nailed it. I think it's about exploring and learning for sure, but you just definitely get sidetracked by all those people in the industry that you went to school with, or you have professional relationships with, and you always want to spend time with them, to the point that sometimes you don't get around to doing what you want to do at the trade show. But overall, I think it's, yeah, Henry, I would totally concur.
Wonderful. Do we have any other comments from people? I'd like a few more opinions here. If I could, someone wants to volunteer, or I'll ask around. Okay, I see that we have a few people from Ag in Motion on here. So if someone would want to comment on that. No? Okay.
Yeah, so sorry.
Oh,
sorry.
sorry, you must have been on mute. Didn't see you.
I'm Amanda McFarlane. I am with Ag in Motion and Canada's Outdoor Farm Show, and our data that we collect from farmers at both of our shows definitely supports that. We phrased it as that they're coming to see innovation and technology, but that's the #1 reason that we see.
Wonderful. Do you have any opposing views that someone might want to just give us another opinion or another side to consider?
I always wonder, Dale Zipper here with Young Canada, I always wonder with these trade shows, and it depends on what the trade shows are and what individuals are seeking out. Definitely at larger trade shows with iron, it's always going to attract, producers in. They love to look at steel, and I think from a learning perspective, we're a well-serviced industry in terms of information dissemination. So it's I'm not always as convinced about the learning component. I think it's very important, but in the brief experiences I've had in taking in some of these virtual meetings, nothing is going to attract folks to a trade show more than being able to feel and touch things such as looking at the latest piece of equipment, etc. It's I like to do it myself. That's one of the things I thoroughly enjoy about trade shows personally, rather than standing in the booth. So just, how that's going to impact a virtual show, I guess, is the play at the end of the day, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's the question. So for our farmers here that have joined us, if you've participated in the past in a virtual show, what made them worthwhile for you? And I'll start with maybe Roberta this time.
Oh boy. Okay, so I'm maybe an odd farmer in that I'm attracted to farm management topics and stuff. I'm not so much about your equipment. It's nice to look at, but it's got a big price tag on it, and I'm not interested in paying a whole bunch of money. So I did participate in I think it was the Ag in Motion one in the summer, and I did participate in 2 or 3 other online conferences this year. And overall, I thought the information was good. Half an hour was about the perfect time slot for a topic. And I'm somebody who likes to get down to brass tacks right away. I don't like all the sort of intro fluff, all that kind of stuff. But that may appeal to other people, right? If there's time to network and stuff. So on the networking thing, lots of those conferences had a breakout session or a beer session or something like that later on in the evening. I did not participate in those, so I can't comment on that. And maybe that's where the networking occurs. I don't know. So I think it's going to be a challenge for conferences to get sponsorship for events being just virtual. I definitely think you're going to have to be very creative about that for engagement. So that's my comment.
No, that's a great comment. Great comment. Kurt, do you have any comments on if you've participated in a past virtual show and what made it worthwhile or enjoyable for you?
I haven't participated in a virtual show, but one benefit I've seen is some of the meetings I've taken in is being able to rewatch it or watch the recorded version at a later time. It really helps fit things in a schedule.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a good note. We have the data for later. Henry, have you participated in a virtual show, and what made it worthwhile for you?
I haven't participated in a virtual trade show, but I've been in several virtual conferences with displays as part of the conference. and also kind of after our social sessions. I, like Roberta, didn't go to any of the social sessions. I checked in on a couple of the booths, but I was essentially there for the material that was being presented in the forum. The particular sessions that or the conference that I'm thinking of at the moment had it was laid out like a trade show, and I enjoyed the format very much. You could find your way around. The part that I didn't enjoy was the ability to interact with various people that you might meet in the hallways of the trade show. That component was missing entirely, and as I had mentioned in my earlier conversation, was what I consider an essential component of a trade show. Usually when I go to physical trade shows, I will have an agenda of things that I want to do there. I might have 3 or 4 specific items that I want information on. I'll seek out those booths to find personnel that can help me with questions or new iron. If there's something new coming out, have a look at it and ask questions about it. On the way to those particular items, then I stumble across colleagues that I've known, and also other new and interesting material and iron, yes, that I may not have seen before, and it grabs my attention as being something new. So that's kind of my strategy for attending shows. And the part that I miss out of virtual shows is that interaction ability.
Yeah, I'll agree with you. I mean, that is what, I guess Robert gave that kind of notation at the beginning. Virtual shows do not replace in-person shows because of that, but so basically we're just trying to figure out what would make it worthwhile to have a virtual show. So it definitely sounds like being able to record these pieces, and yeah, I see that we're trying to have these other events after, like the beers after and all of that virtually in the breakout rooms. So we might need more feedback on, how that's going, but
Well, the biggest trick with the breakout sessions or even having a virtual socialization event or social event, there's no obligation. Like it's just easy to shut your computer off because you're in your house or you're in your office. Maybe now you're lucky enough to get back to your office. So I think that's going to be a very tough sell to continue with that screen time when everyone is zoomed out, teamed out, however you want to call it. So I think for that purpose, when there was some great comments about having an agenda. So and you see it, you still see it with any trade show, is that's what I've always found in the past. People want, when they have something to solve, a problem solved, they know where they got to go, they know who they probably want to talk to. And that's very effective. With the virtual shows, it makes it a lot more tougher. So when you have a virtual trade show area or booth area, I think you're going to have to provide some potential carrots to get people to explore it, instead of to try and pull in the tire kickers and create some demand, or not, well, demand's the wrong word. Interest to be there. Because you even see that at some trade shows where it's no man's land. A trade show is just, folks are busy. So it's going to be a tough waters to navigate, I think, when you talk about the social aspect of what you're trying to achieve with these shows in the future.
No, good points. I guess I have one more question for the organizers of events on the call here. Have you guys seen a lot of farmers take up the networking piece of your virtual events? So I guess Amanda from Ag Emotion, do you want to?
Sure, I can take that one, and I would invite my colleague Carol to jump in at all if she'd like to. But so we did a series of 4 events by the time we did Ag Emotion, Canada's Outdoor Farm Show, and then some of our conferences as well. And then towards the end of that, we were really struggling with that farmer engagement piece. And then towards the end of it, we actually started using a new platform, new to us platform that actually allowed some more of that engagement. And the way it was set up is you'd go sit at a table. And the feedback that we got from that was really that our attendees said it was, you know, the most they felt like being in an in-person event. And so I think if you can provide it in the right way, that people are interested in it. But, you know, certainly our first couple stabs at it didn't get us there, but as we got a little more familiar with some of the technology available to us, we definitely did. And Carol, if there's anything you want to add, that's it for me.
Yeah, I would just add also that I think Ag in Motion was one of the first virtual shows, so there really was a learning curve there. I'm excited for the year ahead to see if there is a higher comfort level and us evolving and coming up with these new platforms to use. I think that will help too. And just one comment as well that was made earlier about having the carrot to dangle. I think in the virtual world, it's not so different from in person where you do have to put the effort in and yes, that carrot, whether it's a contest. So I think it's much like a booth at a trade show where you can't just stand behind the booth on your phone. You need to do something to capture the attention of the audience. So I think it's much the same in the virtual world as well.
We did get a question where people asked what platform was used for people to connect.
Oh, the new platform is called Remo, and we'll be using it in our shows ahead as well. In the original like Ag in Motion and Canada's Outdoor Farm show, we were using more like chat rooms. So there wasn't the opportunity for visible, like seeing each other for those kind of casual conversations. We use Zoom for things like roundtables, but yeah, Remo is what it's called.
No, those are some good comments. I will disagree just respectfully that I do find in that virtual shows are different because, and I agree with you, you can't sit behind your booth, but just having the foot traffic and some of that, you know, personalization of actually seeing someone or gathering people and then someone's buddy walks by and then they join you, like that aspect is missing in virtual, but there are some similarities as well, but I do still find it very different.
Yeah, I think there's a learning curve too. Like if I think of a new exhibitor to an outdoor show who's only used to doing an indoor show, it's hard for them too, because it's so different to be outside. So I think I know what you're saying, I do, but I think there is also a bit of a learning curve to it.
I think we have to understand too, like how like virtual living in the digital world is going to have to abide by digital practices. And if we're expecting that we could force users to use a digital platform differently than they use any other digital platform, I think we're fooling ourselves. You know, people, when they go onto digital, they want to find things quickly, they want to do things quickly. They're not there just to, you know, unless they're on YouTube going down the rabbit hole, and that's generally for entertainment purposes. I think we have to remember there's real limitations on what we can expect a user to do in a digital world. And I think our virtual solutions have to really be aligned with that, because there are rules way outside of our control that are going to dictate what's going to be successful or not.
It's an interesting point, David. And if we get to it, some additional questions towards the end is based on a comment from one of our members with the survey about instead of trying to recreate an in-person experience virtually, we need to blow this up and approach it in different ways. And so hopefully we'll get to that. But I want to go to the second poll and move us along now. So we want to discuss how we can make participating in virtual shows the easiest and most enjoyable for farmers, kind of what we were talking about. So in the survey, you told us that virtual shows need to be easy to use for farmers and make them feel that they can easily connect with other people. So put the second poll up here. What's the most important thing we can do to make it easiest to participate and most enjoyable for farmers? Give you 30 seconds. All right, as soon as those results are in, going to turn it over to Lauren to tackle this one for us.
I don't see the results yet, but
Oh, I know people have been kind of slow to respond. Some are still coming in, but I think we're slowed down here.
Again, it's getting tougher as we go, people.
I agree with the comments about rural internet. Okay, so technology and smaller. Okay, that's good. So yeah, maybe let me just go through them here. So shorter show days. So the winners were technology and smaller specific shows were the top two. But we do have a spread across. So let's just go through them. But shorter show days. Personally, I think shorter show days are helpful. Say that 3 times quickly. I think it's difficult for anyone, whether you're a farmer or not, to remain fully engaged in a virtual meeting or virtual setting for an all-day event. So I think scheduling shorter times with some breaks in between will be important to get the participation engagement that we're looking for. The next one that got the highest number of votes, so simple technology and accessibility. I think this is table stakes. The technology has to work, and it needs to be 1 or 2 clicks, and of course mobile friendly. So no surprise that got the most votes out from the audience. Smaller and more topic specific shows. This is the one where I put my vote on. I think the smaller audience is more conducive to increased interaction, and you get better engagement versus if you just had a presentation type of feeling where it was like a one-way conversation. So I think just to get that engagement, having a smaller form, you generally get better engagement. And then the last one, show recording, allowing farmers to watch watch it on their own schedule. So this is an interesting one for me. And although we appreciate the flexibility to watch a recorded webinar in our own time, I'd be interested to hear what others think on this one, and maybe even hearing some stats from some of the show organizations that can help guide us. It was Kurt, you'd mentioned that you did appreciate that, being able to go back and rewatch or watch a recorded one. And when I was thinking about this, personally, I can only think of maybe 2 re-recorded webinars that I went back in this past year and watched. What I find is that typically if I don't have the time to make the live event, I rarely find time to go back and watch a pre-recorded session. I did attend a few of the sessions with the Ag in Motion digital show, and my impression, at least for the Bayer topics that I was on, was that we had good attendance at the start, and then as the presentation went by and it was more obvious that it was a pre-recorded session, I saw that the attendance was dropping off, and I was wondering if that was due to being pre-recorded versus live or not. Maybe Amanda, I'll turn it over to you for your thoughts on these topics.
Yeah, I'll agree with some of the comments in the chat. So what Roberta was saying, how she could select all 4. So just, making sure that it's simple, I guess something that doesn't use too much bandwidth, and being shorter, because I know that, zoomed out is a phrase that we have now that didn't exist before. So yeah, I would like to hear what everyone else has to say as well. So I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, so, I do think that farmers find value in being able to interact and ask questions to a live presenter. I know Amanda and Carol, you from the Canada Outdoor Farm Show had gave a few comments in before, and I think there was some other folks from Glacier Farm Media. So maybe do you have some, not to cold call you or put you on the spot, but do you have some stats, or can you share some insights on with us on what gets the most views? Is it live or is it the recorded session? How long do they typically watch if they're in the live versus the pre-recorded? Can you share any thoughts on that?
And just a reminder to everyone, so using the reactions, you can raise your hand that way, because that's the easiest way for Amanda, myself, and Lauren to see you.
So which hand do you want us to use? There's no hand. There's clap, thumbs up, heart.
Yeah, so if you don't have raise hand, not everyone does if you're on iPad or something. So if you don't have that, then you can maybe do the clap, and we'll watch for the clap as well, Kristen.
Okay, so I do have a comment. And I guess I pose it to you guys, are we really a show if we are doing a little 30-minute clip, right? If we're seeing that we're going to small little mini conferences, and here in Manitoba, the Manitoba Forage and Grassland Association, they actually pivoted. Instead of having it's typically a 1.5-day conference, they went to every Thursday night for the month of November for an hour and a half. They had fantastic uptake. They had fantastic attendance. They had a bull session at the end of it, and it worked really well. The timeline was set. It was recorded so you could watch it afterwards, but their uptake during it was great and spaced out. And I really applaud them for that pivot.
Yeah, that's a good comment. And it's just, I think we're in this stage where we're open to try new things and see what works. So thanks for sharing. Other thoughts?
Chrissy has her hand up.
Hi, it's Chris. Yeah, it's Chrissy from Agri-food here. I'm going to jump in as well. I agree with Kristen. I think right now with this, we're all having trouble visualizing this because we're talking with the lingo trade shows. And we all get virtual. The virtual trade show component isn't really working, especially compared to what Kristen said, some of those smaller things that are more engaged, those shorter learning content. But when we talk about trade shows, especially in Canada, the ones that we all know, they're big with iron. That networking is a major component of it. But I think what you're seeing, or what we're seeing as that is getting what you guys want to call that carrot that's dangling, is more of those education sessions and those smaller sessions. So that stigma we're talking about is trade shows. Trade shows are trade shows, that's iron, that's people in person, where the virtual stuff, you are seeing a little progress happen where there's those shorter education segments. But like everybody else right now, it's nice outside. We're looking at the clock. We're producers, 20 minutes. We're ready to get itching and get in that field or go into the shop, right? So, so I think if we can realign our thoughts and not call it trade shows, I think that might help this group or this working group give some better ideas for the virtual options.
Yeah, good points, Chrissy. And I think, you raise another topic about timing. And so it really is, post-harvest to before it starts warming up, where we do have to make the most use of our timing for these virtual shows. David, I think you had your hand up next, and then Jake.
Yeah, I think, Chrissy, I think you kind of hit it on the nail on the head. I think what we're seeing in Macy is a decoupling of the two major pieces of a trade show: the information seeking and delivery, and the interaction and the iron, like the experience piece. My opinion is digital is never going to be able to replicate the interaction and the experience piece. It's always going to be a poor substitute for it. It can do the information delivery, but it's got to do it differently. I think if you look at like other major trade shows like E3, CES that have all gone digital, they've gone to smaller bite-sized information delivery because that's how people consume digitally. Again, I think this idea of trying to replicate the trade show, like both elements of it, and being able to do that in a virtual space just is going to be near impossible. I think it's just there's always going to be that downfall that you can't replace that in person, that touching feeling of the iron, the bumping into friends. That's that maybe the last thing too, is there's a big gap between intent and action. And I think that also with trade shows, while the intent for many was, I'm going to go and I'm going to find out all the latest information, a lot of the action at these trade shows ended up being social. I think we've all been there. Trade shows, many of them in Canada, became more focused on the social element and connecting people than pure information. So it's another thing to be, conscious of.
Thanks for that, David. So yeah, we'll move over to Jake, and then I think I saw it's a little bit challenging when you got 3 screens to make sure you don't miss a hand. So if you raise your hand, just leave it up. But I think it was Henry after Jake, and then Mike, I saw yours maybe up and down. So Jake, go ahead.
Yeah, I think David touched on a lot of what I think we could definitely see as a good direction to go into it. Look at different industries and see how they're seeing success. So again, the gaming industry, that's one area where technology has been embraced much quicker than other industries. So again, yeah, something like E3, or you look at, even so Adobe, they had their conference online this year where normally they invite people in. So what they essentially did was an overall, one keynote to kind of get people excited about what's new, what's shiny. And then they had their breakout sessions kind of thing, where that's where you can kind of talk about, the details. And then after that, people can use social media to kind of have that social experience where you can actually connect with people on a one-on-one level. So that's kind of where you can see those different levels on how do you break down a trade show into a digital environment.
Henry?
Yeah, the back to that last poll question, I agreed with the way the results came out. Keep it simple, keep it easy on the technology side. I've often wondered, and perhaps there's somebody doing it and I'm not familiar with it, but lots of rural farmhouses have now set up media rooms to do their viewing of Netflix and various things. But yet we still do these Zoom calls on the computer. And if any of you are in the same category as I am with a set of bifocals now, it gets pretty tiring after a period of time. I'm thinking there's an opportunity to send out HDMI cables and webcams and little keypads that you can do these sessions on the big screen down in the basement rather than on the computer on your office desk. So that's one thing. I agree with the comments. I think it was David said that I see these shows breaking up into their components, and whether they would be one entity or several entities, I'm not sure. And that is the education session, the social session, the touchy-feely session of the iron. I think that's what we're talking about. It's different segments that were all combined in one show and seen as one entity in the past. I think that whoever made the comments about the number of participants in a session, I think you were getting at the feeling that I've had in many sessions that I've sat in on places like Farm Tech, where 10 minutes into the session, I knew I was, this was not the information that I thought it was going to be. The speaker was boring. The information was off track to what I had planned to hear. And if I hadn't been sitting in the middle of a room of 200 people, I'd have been out the door virtually as well. So I think there's a lesson in that these topics and presentations have to be extremely concise, on topic, and with some entertainment to them of some sort. Otherwise, you'll find that kind of thing happening. I'm involved in another organization, and we're doing Saturday morning sessions. I haven't heard what the registration is for the coming Saturday, but the last one we had 1,300 registrants for it, and could handle a maximum of 1,000 on the screen at the time of the session. Went very well, and most participants stayed till the end of the session. But it was a safety orientation seminar for pilots. So, but again, very much on target, right on theme with what people were looking for, and an entertaining speaker. So a few comments about how I see these breaking up in the future, at least virtually.
Good. Those are all really good comments, Henry. Thanks for sharing. Mike, did you still have a question before we turn it back to Robert for the next poll?
No, I didn't have any questions. I was using the hand clap.
Well,
So,
you can give me claps anytime you want. I
Yeah.
appreciate them. Thank you
Yeah.
very much. Okay, Robert, let's turn it back to you to keep us going.
Sure, sounds good. Third one is, you told us in our survey that virtual shows have not lived up to your expectations. Ouch. So poll number 3, who's responsible for thinking bigger in how to use and what to offer in a virtual show? Going to turn this one over to Amanda once all the answers are in. She's going to walk us through this and probably pick on some agribusinesses and some organizers on this one.
Okay, so the results are in. So who's responsible for thinking bigger in how to use and what to offer in a virtual show? And the answer was astoundingly both the show organizer and agribusiness. I feel like, Henry, you led us in perfectly to this topic here. So that's good. Yeah, so I guess the question is so based on some of the comments of like not calling it a trade show and not getting siloed into trying to recreate a physical event, because a virtual event is different. So just, having that understanding, how do you guys think that you'll make a virtual show, for the end of this year different or bigger, if you will? So I'll check my list here. I believe we had someone from, sorry, my computer. Of course, when I want to use my computer, it goes really slow. You know what? What about Kelly Green? I know that you're with the Canadian Canola Growers Association. How do the virtual events affect how you guys are doing your planning for this year?
It's a big question.
It's a big question.
So, I can honestly say, sitting around a boardroom table with farmers, quite often there is a lot of desire to be able to connect in person again and see people face to face. And I think that's, coming from a farm, I think that's a natural tendency that we have, is to want to connect in person. And so this is a real big issue we struggle with this year in particular, is how is this year going to transition forward for everyone? And that's a really difficult question, because we really don't know. And we like many of you, work across multiple provinces, and rules are different everywhere, which complicates things even more. So, I think we have some hope that we will have some in-person activities again this year. We have seen some really positive uptake on virtual events. I wouldn't call them trade shows. I would call them more conferences. And I think we have seen some really strong attendance in events that we haven't seen in in-person events before. Those are largely knowledge kinds of sessions. Yesterday alone, we had the Canadian Crops Convention, which had a bigger attendance than it would have in person. So I think we're really looking at, or some of our smaller events, like some of our leadership events that we do across canola associations, where we work together and have some really good participation in small group events. So I think we're looking at, where does virtual fit and where does virtual not fit? Our experience on the virtual trade show side has not been positive. It's been rather disappointing, honestly. And so that for us has been a real process to think through. And, we undertook, things to encourage people to come to booths, and just felt that was disappointing, because it's just, those are things, and I think several people have already mentioned it. Those are just, people want to touch and feel and talk to someone in person. And it might be easier to do that if you're standing in front of someone than if you're just going to click on a button and you don't know who you're going to see, who you're going to talk to. So, we're looking at likely in the future doing combination kinds of events. some virtual, but also, we do believe there is still a big space for in-person engaging with farmers into the future. And I think that's something a lot of people are really looking forward to again. The one interesting thought will be, how do we mix these, let's say 4 years down the road? Because, as soon as things open up, people are going to want to be in person a lot, but that may, because we've all been home by ourselves for so long, but that, that's going to potentially even out over time as well. So, yeah.
No, good thoughts and good comments. Lauren, sorry, I got so excited. I just dove in. Do you have any thoughts on the results?
Oh, no worries. I think the last set of comments was probably more inspirational than what I could have delivered. So you picked the right, you went down the right path. Yeah, I would concur with the group. I think both is the answer on the poll question. I think this is really an opportunity for us to work together. My main point is we need to do it in a transparent manner and ensure we're all aligned on requirements. I think it was a learning year, but building digital materials, platforms, filming videos, even reaching out to sales or agronomy folks to make sure they're available in a live time period. This all takes time to organize, and I think if we really want to be successful, we need to be planning these virtual events over multiple months. Last year, reflecting back, it was a bit challenging because we were all shut down in March. I think we all still hope that live shows were going to open up, and consequently, I don't feel that the industry had enough time and ability to pull off a virtual show that met our customers' expectations. And the one key message I remember repeating numerous times to my team and our organization is that last year we were going to be present, but we weren't going to be perfect. And we needed to set those proper expectations given the limited amount of time that we had. I actually can't wait to see what we as an industry are going to do this year and how we're going to step up, given we've had a bit more time to think about how we want to roll out these virtual events.
That's a great note. We're going to be present, but not perfect. This is a learning curve for all of us. So I like your saying there. I see Robert has his hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to just pick up on something that Kelly Green said about farmers not knowing, they enter a room, who's going to be there. So I'm wondering, and maybe some of you all that are participating in virtual shows quite a bit, as well as the organizers, we learned through the survey research that creating a profile and potentially connecting that with the theme of the show. So maybe put something personal in, or something that they were specifically looking forward to, or a topic, whatever have you. And so I'm wondering if, as we know, when we all register for a CAMA event, we can give the option of showing that we're attending an event. And so I'm wondering if there's an opportunity for farmers to actually be creating a bit of a network or a group within a larger show, where they can actually hang out with their buddies at break times, and they know that their 3 friends or 13 friends or colleagues or whatever are going to be there in that same space, just from a comfort. So I'll put that out, I guess, maybe to any of the organizers or any of the agribusinesses.
Sure, I can come back on that one. Call one of the places Billy Bob's. I think if those of you who have been in Red Deer know Billy Bob's, you'd recognize a few people would go to that. A great point about having either social interactions by location or by a topic. You could have a social event by topic with a moderator. Those kind of things I think could work well. I like the idea of agribusiness and show organizers working together. This is obviously a joint effort in my books to present the future, whatever that might be, as a jointly organized event. It's going to take all minds to make this work. I had another thought about the shows themselves. I think there's a virtual side of these that could work, and that is essentially traveling the hallways of a show with various booths off to the side, and you could do that all virtually and just hit the button to travel around the show floor. I think about things moving online. Just think a year ago, think 2 years, 5 years ago, think of the advent of Amazon. Think about your last trip to McDonald's. Did you go to the counter or did you use the virtual screen when you walked in the door? And think about that transition over the last 5 years. I see the future as having a marrying of all of those technologies, whether it's an in-person show or a future virtual show. We're going to see a lot more marrying of the technology, being able to pick on the topics you want to go to, the social events you want to go to, and do it rather instantaneously than spending 3 days walking hallways. So I see the compression of the education, the social, and the entertainment side of these things into a shorter, timelier, and more effective for me and use of my time windows of our life.
Oh, those are great comments. Efficiency is important, and I mean, you guys are busy, so these are really good comments. I see David, you had your hand up next.
Yeah, I think that the one thing that we've been kind of working with a bunch of our clients on is, it's and this isn't new, but the idea of you get out of it what you put into it, and I think for exhibiting companies, they got to realize that just because you're there doesn't mean you're going to get a whole bunch of traffic and people are going to show up. Even more so in a digital space, like if you have 500 exhibitors, there's only so much traffic that show organization can ever deliver to you if you're all just 500 links. And this includes, your efforts before the show, during the show, and even after the show. I think, we had a great, CAMA had a great presentation by David Postel from AGI, who talked about what they were doing to kind of stand out in that digital trade show space. And I think it's a good example of an ag business saying, no, we're gonna give people a reason to come and check us out versus we're just gonna be there and that's enough reason. I think it's the same thing at a real trade show. There's the big booths, the ones that have the reasons to go and visit them will get the most foot traffic. Just it's the nature of the business. So.
No, good points for sure. How do we stand out more? Those are things that we all need to take away with our own businesses and see how we can make that valuable. I see Jeremy, you have your hand up as well.
Yeah, so a couple things just as I'm listening and all the different poll questions. And, we did a poll of a bunch of our clients that are farmers last year just about why they go to trade shows. And it's interesting how this poll differs significantly from what the farmer group that we surveyed said. And the three reasons were, the number one was to get off the farm. I think we're underestimating the fact that farmers want to get off the farm. And I think that, so one was get off the farm, two was to network, and three was to see new technology and equipment in that order. And I'm looking at this and I thought of what Chrissy had said about, maybe we need to not call these trade shows. And as I'm listening to this, I think that really that's probably hitting the nail on the head. We are not going to replicate a trade show. No matter what we do virtually, it's not going to replicate it. David, you're bang on. When there's 500 exhibitors at a trade show, it's different than 500. A farmer's never going to go through 500 booths digitally. So I really think that, these are two separate things. Virtually conferences, smaller conferences, maybe. For agribusinesses, putting on their own conference and bringing in their own experts and recruiting people are probably going to be the biggest bang for the buck. And then the last comment I had was on the social and what you can do virtually to have people interact. And one of the shows that I attended virtually was in the UK. And it was kind of cool how they had done it, but they didn't keep people in. So they had different tents. So they had like a planting tent, a tillage tent, and inside the tent, there was different booths. They had a beer tent. And in the beer tent, it was a Zoom, it was a Zoom, so you could go in and then you could see everybody, and they had a live DJ, and it was kind of cool for about 10 minutes. And then after that, it was like, okay, this is over. And I think that that's the hardest part, is when we look at why farmers go to shows, it is to network and hang out with their buddies. Like Henry said, you meet all these people in the halls. Right now, there's restrictions and different things in all these different provinces. In a couple months, people are going to just get in their truck, if they're not already doing it, and just drive over to their neighbor's farm to hang out, right? They're going to, last year it was different. You weren't allowed to go visit anyone. Things are changing. And I feel like we need to almost approach this from two perspectives. Trade shows are going to be trade shows, whether they happen this year or not. We're not going to be able to replicate that. So what can we do virtually? And I think that's it's not going to be a group thing. It's going to be individual things virtually that bring people in. Just my 2 cents.
Some thoughts to think about for sure. I'd also like to get some opinion on some big equipment. So I think Adam Reed might be on this call if you want to give some thoughts on virtual shows.
Sure, absolutely. We've only really dabbled in it because obviously it's come up before. A big part of what we do involves the touching and the feeling and crawling up in the cab and things like that. And we simply haven't been able to find any kind of formula that's even close to that. We've done a few things on our own, but really nothing that's resonated. Even with our dealers that are relatively committed, we only have their attention on webinars and product launches for, say, 30 minutes or 45 minutes at a time. So probably the biggest headache I've experienced in this, beyond obviously not being able to have a physical show, not so much in Canada, but a lot of the American publishers have now come up with the idea that everybody should have a show that is 365 days a year virtual. And essentially what some of them are doing is just ripping stuff off of our website and expecting us to man a booth 24 hours a day. So it's been really frustrating trying to decide how to get away from those and still obviously support the shows that we plan to go back to. So that's been one of the biggest challenges for us. But in general, we just haven't found any kind of secret formula that's really going to replace being there in person. So, that's been one of our struggles.
Yeah, that's a fair comment, is just, where do these virtual shows fit? And it's really from this discussion, is what I'm gathering thus far, is that they fit as an addendum, but not as a replacement. So it's just an enhancement, but definitely, the physical shows, those are the trade shows, and the conferences or whatever else we decide to call them, it's a different piece that adds, but doesn't replace.
I mean, we obviously are expecting the next show to be a massive show from an attendance standpoint, because there's that pent up demand of farmers to get out there and see and interact and all that. But for us, the virtual show from a machinery standpoint, it's been a miss. And, we normally, I guess we've been spoiled, because if we park a tractor on a booth and do nothing else, that's usually enough to bring people in. So we're trying to work around this from a virtual side of things. Like, they can go on YouTube and virtually watch stuff. They don't necessarily need our level of interaction for that.
Yeah, good comments. Robert, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I want to hear, Amanda, who haven't we heard from the show organizers? Because I want to kind of bring the topic to them, that recreating a trade show is pointless. And so I think that a lot of them have tried very hard to do that very thing. And agri-marketers might be saying, well, you have not been successful. So I want to hear a little bit more from them before we move on to the next one.
Okay, does anyone want to volunteer? Otherwise, I have to check the list on the side.
I'll go ahead. It's Chrissy from Agri-Trade. I'm sure lots of people aren't going to like what I have to say, but as most of you know, we canceled probably a little too late last year for us, but overall, really, it goes in three ways. The farmers are what make the trade shows. If they're not there, we don't have exhibitors. The exhibitors are what make the trade shows. If they're not there, we don't have a show. And we found that out really quick, right? We tried to work really closely with our exhibitors, and we were lucky enough that they gave us honest and raw feedback, and they did not want to go virtual. So our decision was they did not want to go virtual, and it was over 90% of them said no virtual. So we canceled the show because of that. And it wasn't just because of our exhibitors, it was the farmers. And so when we polled our exhibitors and the farmers, which ultimately make Agri-Trade, because if it wasn't for them, we would not have a show. We opted out. So, but like everything else, it's not really the show organizers per se. We don't make those calls. It's our exhibitors and the producers that do. So I think we all just have to listen to them, and they're going to ultimately tell us how to run our events per se.
No, those are fair comments, especially, you know, if some of the vendors aren't ready to go digital, or if they're, you know, and how, you know, you're listening to both your audiences. So I mean, that makes sense. I see Amanda had her hand up.
Yeah, I did mention in the chat, but when both David and Jeremy were speaking, you know, they definitely made some good points.
Oh, your volume went down. Sorry. We missed what you said.
Sorry, is that better?
Yeah, can hear you.
Sorry about that. When both David and Jeremy were talking earlier, I, you know, was certainly agreeing. Our biggest learning from last year was that our, you know, a 500 company digital trade show is challenging in terms of traffic without having that foot traffic. So, yeah, I would have, I would agree with that as well. I'll just say.
Yeah. Fair comments. Mark, you had your hand up as well.
It's a perspective from a dealer/retailer. We looked at the virtual shows last year and participated in one of them. And generally in the physical shows, the dealer personnel show up to help the brands. I think it was Adam who said very correctly, if you park a tractor on a piece of ground, people will come and look at it. And the fallout from that is they engage in conversations and away you go. From our perspective at the retail level, virtual shows are a non-starter. Expecting any of our people to kind of sit there and pay attention and be available is taking money out of their pocket, because for the most part, they're paid on commission and they're paid to be in front of people. So that's one thing. I think the brands that we work with have a great opportunity in the virtual platform. I think, and it's been said many times, so I won't belabor the point, but there's room for a hybrid and perhaps small digital bites and then large physical shows. The social aspect of the shows, some of my colleagues in other industries think that a farm show is a trade show like E3 or CES or the heavy equipment show in Las Vegas, which is probably closer to a farm show than an actual business show. But an awful lot of trade or business shows are very much about business, and a farm show isn't. It's a real hybrid of socializing and catching up and visiting. And the 4 choices at the very beginning was really difficult, because I've heard people adamantly speak for each of them. You know, I only go to farm shows because it gets me away from the farm for a couple of days. It's like, yep. So just a little bit of random thoughts, but our perspective as a retailer, it didn't really work. The farmers will find us. That's been our experience. So thank you. Good conversation.
Yeah, agree. Before I go to you, David, I just had this one question, and I want to ask our 2 farmers here. What do we think about crop tours, like virtual crop tours? How does that factor in as a component for you, Roberta?
So as far as a virtual crop tour, I think you'd want to have a really great topic, some great video footage, and you'd want to have really good internet, right, to show that. And so that's your biggest challenge. I think you get the best interaction when it's a small focused invite only type event for those kinds of things. And if it was live time, the day that you had it might be really challenging. If it's really bright, you might not see the crop in the same way that you might if it was overcast or whatever. So I think it's really challenging unless you had that recorded ahead of time, and then it was something that you could just click and then you could have the video run, but then you could have a voiceover or a Q&A. That might be your best sort of hybrid model. Yeah, and then the refreshments afterwards, you're going to miss out on those, right? And so that's what everybody goes to the crop tour for. So that's a challenge, I think.
No, that's definitely some fair comments. It does take away some of the live aspects of a tour by having that, barbecue and drinks after and having the live piece. I'll just get if Kurt can comment on that as well.
Yeah, I agree with Roberta. Definitely the same thing applies to farm shows as crop tours, that there's a socialization aspect. Myself personally, I would prefer to, have things pre-recorded and watch them on my own time. Things in the middle of the days, especially in the summer, it's just, I have the best plans to attend them and go in the office in the middle of the day and watch it, and things stack up during the day and you end up missing it. It's been my experience. It's just hard to block off that time in the summer, where if you actually get in a truck and drive to the tour and your phone rings, like you're there at the tour, you're going to stay.
No, good comment.
The choice of just walking from the shop to the house or from the house back to the shop.
Yeah, so definitely are some perks there. David, I saw you had your hand up.
Yeah, one of the things that I've kind of wondered throughout this year was, again, down this path of not like trades or virtual trying to mimic or replicate the existing trade show, but how can it be different? How can virtual provide something that a live trade show just simply couldn't? Like, that's where digital does the best, is when it provides something that you couldn't do in person or with the existing solution. Like, Netflix didn't take over cable TV because it simply replicated cable TV. It didn't go to a programmatic delivery of TV that you have to watch it. It made it even better by allowing you to view whatever, whenever you wanted. And so, is there something in the virtual space that we could do something that was just that you just simply couldn't even do in a live event? I don't even know what that is. And I don't think it's the, augmented reality tour things. Like, I think that we've already seen in other industries, and as well as this one, that those still they're not the same thing as jumping in the cab of a new piece of iron. But is there something else that these virtual solutions can deliver that the audience just simply couldn't get elsewhere?
Good comments. Just curious if anyone from AGI is on as well to give their thoughts. Okay, that's okay. I wasn't sure if anyone was.
Bev was on the call just earlier. I'm not sure if she's still on, but Bev was on the call.
Okay.
Well, I think I'll take us into our fourth poll now. So you told us in the survey results that agribusinesses we've been talking about this, want virtual shows to create farmer engagement opportunities to allow for, I quote, casual conversations, chance meetings, and deeper conversations about specific topics. We also heard that agribusinesses need to think bigger than just a few days. One of our members said, I don't rely on 2 to 3 days to connect. The connection is every day. So looking at 365-day connection plan. So on that note, we're going to put up poll number 4 here. What is the best way for a virtual show format to support the bringing together of farmers and agribusinesses? Give you another 30 seconds to answer. I'm going to turn this one over to Lauren to to analyze for us. Yes, Mark Dawson, they are all good. Excellent points. Got to pick your favorite. And I think we want to hear obviously from both agribusinesses as well as the organizers too, because at the end of the day, if we're asking them to do stuff, which some of which they're already doing, we need to figure this out. So there we go. Results are in. Lauren, I'll pass it over to you.
Well, that's pretty clear. Small spattering across them all, but can't miss event took number one. So let's I'll just talk about a couple of them then. I won't hit all these before we turn it over for comments. The two that I thought were relevant when I was reading the question was the speed dating and the can't miss event. Although I don't really think the term speed dating may be relevant or entice a farmer, I really like this concept of having small breakout rooms. I think we've talked about that a bit here today, where like-minded individuals can get together and engage in a conversation about a specific topic. Yeah, so I think just giving the farmer that ability to get those live answers is important. I also think, David, you had just started talking about what else can we do in a virtual setting. And, I think that it is a unique opportunity to access expertise in our companies that wouldn't normally be possible. If we had an expert out of Germany or the US, it's much easier for them to dial in. So access to those expertise versus, travel to Canada for a few days to participate in our event. So I think that might be something that, we need to take the opportunity to tap in more in a virtual setting than what we do. And then, what you guys all, or the majority of the respondents talked about, is the can't miss the event. So a product launch or a high profile speaker. This is really similar to a live event. Having that keynote speaker that draws the crowds in can be, that's a great tactic to gain those attendees and create that engagement with the audience. So I agree that is something we should be looking at more with our virtual conferences. Amanda, what are your thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, I would agree with the analysis here that, it's still the biggest pull would be having something, to release or launch to get that initial impact and interest. Yeah, that's all we can really do to get that attention. Otherwise, like some comments prior, it's just kind of a discussionary event. So having that pull really, makes it special, keeps it as an event to see and to, gives that pull to actually attend. So I would agree with that.
Thanks, Amanda. Let's open it up to the audience. So I'd be interested to know, what tactics have you seen this past year? Could be in our industry, or maybe, there's something outside of our ag industry, or, people like David on the phone that's and an agency that maybe represents other industries or other clients. So what have you seen that you thought, man, that was a great idea? And yeah, what's working out there?
David's hand is up.
Go ahead, David.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to that comment you made, Lauren, about providing access to knowledge and experts that you couldn't get otherwise, and even getting one-on-one access with them, being able to use meeting scheduling tools where a grower can talk to someone in an organization that they generally would never be able to get access to. And I think that there's opportunity in that. I was at an event, a virtual event, where we were able to set meetings with high up leaders in some of these major agencies in the world, these global agencies, and actually have a 20-minute chat with them. I would never expect that ever in an event before. I would expect that I'd be sitting in a keynote session with them and have them talking to the many, but being able to have 20 minutes to ask this person my own questions, that was differentiating. That to me was an aha moment. Wow, bring on a Bayer one of your key kind of crop scientists and allow them to have, you know, access for 2 hours kind of thing in 20-minute, 15-minute intervals would be, I think that'd be priceless. I think it'd be great.
Yeah, thanks, David. That does remind me, when COVID first started, we had a conference call with some folks out of China, where COVID actually started, and just they were a couple months ahead of us. So just getting their insights and opinions, I think, was really valuable, just to set expectations. So that's something that we wouldn't have normally done, you know, even a couple of years ago. Other thoughts?
I have a couple, and I feel like the farmers in this group are getting to talk more than others, so I apologize and take it for what it is. But I think there's an opportunity here. No. So I think there's an opportunity there. Like, if you look at it from the other perspective, from a trade show perspective, there's no bad spot. No, I'm beside the bathroom, or I'm behind so and so or whatever. There's no bad spot. And if you can be creative enough to have engage with producers to come to your session, and then engage with them online and have some maybe small Q&A or something like that, I think you might actually be more effective in some of those conversations. You don't have to have some splashy display necessarily to get them to come into your booth, and you don't have to try and make eye contact with somebody. Or for those that are working the booth, you don't have to stand there on cement all day hoping that somebody comes to talk to you. So there's some pluses, I think. You don't have to worry about the weather so much, notwithstanding rural internet. The weather, you know, it's -30, you can still go to the conference and you can still engage. Time is a big one. I know it must be for you, but it definitely is for us. We live rurally, and so for us to go to Winnipeg is a 3-hour drive one way. And so if I don't have to spend 6 hours in my car to go and see somebody talk, then that's a win for me. Not only time, but money. I've noticed that a lot of the conferences and learning opportunities are free. I technically think that you could charge for some of those and then recoup some of your speaker costs, because I suspect that there are still costs involved with putting these on that farmers typically don't see. And they probably don't even think about it because it's virtual. So there would be no cost, which is not the case. So cost, travel time, weather, no bad spot. Yeah, those were the ones that I just sort of noted. And I think that one of the biggest challenges that we have as producers has been being zoomed out, and it's the beginning of March and we're zoomed out. We could be on a Zoom call every day, several times a day. So beware of that. You might get less engagement because of that. But anyway, you guys are all creative, and I applaud the effort that goes into pulling these shows together. I used to work on the Crop Connect committee. I know what happens behind the scenes to try and entice fickle farmers to a show. And I say that in the most respectful way as being a farmer, but it's tough to get us to commit, and it's easy for us to back out. And that's unfortunate, because I know how much effort goes into putting these things on. So kudos to you for asking great questions, and hopefully out of this, you'll get the answers that you want.
Thanks, Roberta, for those comments. Robert, and then Megan.
I want to hear from Roberta and Kurt. Just so that last poll, which one did you pick? What was your #1 way to engage with agribusinesses? Roberta, do you want to go first?
I think I said the 62%, like the targeted, yeah.
The can't miss event?
Yeah, the can't miss event. And unlike Kurt, I probably don't go back and look at the pre-recorded session or the recorded session as much as I should. And somebody put on here that they had a library of what they listened to, and I sometimes get egged out. Like, I can only take so much information and I have to go and do something else. So that just might be me.
Which is interesting knowing your past role, Roberta.
Right?
Right. Like you were, for those of you that don't know Roberta, she wears multiple hats and was like a farmer representative in Manitoba here. So it's interesting to hear that comment from you.
Yeah. Well, there are days when I'm getting to the end of my career. So succession planning is rearing its ugly head and I've got to find something else to do with my time. So that's my challenge.
And then for Kurt, for you, which one did you pick for your #1 way to engage with agribusinesses?
I also picked the Can't Miss event.
So I guess as a challenge then so are we already doing that with these shows, these conferences, these trade shows where we do have that event? And then I guess for the organizers, how can a agribusiness use that event to engage with farmers?
Yeah, I like the format of having like a keynote speaker coupled with a product promotion.
Okay. All right, good to know. Lauren, I'll turn it back to you for the 2 hands up.
Okay, we'll go Megan and then Dallas is after Megan.
So I'm from Grubber Nutrition, so a little bit of industry perspective. So with that last poll, I chose having like a can't miss event, big speaker, and I think virtual shows are a good opportunity to bring in those speakers from, other countries or just some of those big headline type speakers that you wouldn't get to actually travel. And I think from an industry perspective, we've participated in a couple of virtual trade shows. And I found that having the virtual booth there hasn't been super beneficial. You don't get that farmer interaction much. So I think having, if we could sponsor having one of those big headline speakers come in, I think that would be of interest to industry. Like we'd be willing to put our money behind that of bringing a really good and informative speaker to our producers and customers. And then also with that, an organization we're a part of, they're doing a webinar series for their members, and as a sponsor we get to ask 2 poll questions during those webinars. So I think that's also adding a benefit to industry. If we're sponsoring that speaker, then we get to run some polls during the Zoom, and then that gives us feedback, and it's an easy way to do some market research. So I think that would be an added benefit, a way to add benefit to that. And then just one other thing, one of those other options was about running a contest to draw people in. So I'm just thinking of like at the outdoor farm show, you see those people walking around with bags full of swag. Some people go just for that. And so we did try and run a contest during the virtual outdoor farm show. And I think you still get those people that are coming to your booth just because they know you're running a contest and they're like, sure, I'll take a free hat. And so I think, but in a virtual setting, it's more difficult to pull that person into a conversation. Whereas if they're walking into your booth in person, you can draw them into a conversation before handing out some free swag. So that's just a point that I've noticed. One of the shows that we're involved in that's coming up in the next month, they're telling us that we should run a contest to draw in producers. But again, I'm hesitant because you don't want people coming just to get something free. And so that's my perspective on that side of things.
Okay, thanks, Megan. Keynotes, market research opportunity, and pros and cons of contests. Good, thanks for sharing. Okay, Dallas, we'll turn it over to you.
I'm with Goodwin Balance Communications, and I am actually an event organizer. So just 2 things specifically for trade shows is people do business. Hang on a sec. Sorry about that. People in trade shows and producers primarily people do business with people they like. So how many farmers out there don't necessarily go to a particular booth because they don't happen to like the exhibitor? And I know that sounds crazy, but it's very true. And the other thing with networking is that there's a rule of thumb that if you don't speak to or talk to someone for a whole year, you lose that connection. And that's one of the reasons the networking is so crucial at trade shows, because it keeps those connections. I think so many people have made the comment that producers like going to trade shows because they get to kick tires and they get to network. And I think that is very true. One of the things that when you're marketing any sort of event or trade show, particularly a trade show, it's the job of the show to get people to the front door to come in. It's the role of the exhibitor to actually get them from the front door to your booth. And that takes actually training of your exhibitors. So how many of us have ever gone in and seen someone's on the phone, they're eating their lunch, they're doing something else, they're not interactively. And if you have 500 booths and someone's walking in front of your booth, you have a 6 to 8 second chance to grab their attention. So you better try and have people there who are actually really involved. A lot of trade show exhibitors, there's no post-show follow-up. They have all these wonderful connections, but they don't follow up on them. And that's unfortunate. And therefore, I'm probably the only person in that poll who really liked, as David said, the one-on-one communication with somebody that you potentially know. So I like the fact that there's no, like as Roberta said, you don't have to travel. Producers don't want to pay. They're willing to pay to get into a conference where there's education. They're not necessarily willing to pay to walk a trade show. And that's one of the reasons why sponsorship is crucial. That sponsorship, or that money, comes from the exhibitors per se. Virtual exhibitors don't want it. There's no value to them. And what we were finding from our exhibitors, they didn't want the virtual simply because they could do it themselves. They could connect with their own. So that is interesting. One little tidbit as well, doing a virtual when you're doing speakers, and we've had a lot of very high-end speakers internationally over the years, but the recommendations right now for anything virtual is effectively have your speakers, and it doesn't make a difference whether you have them all in one day or you spread them over a month, but have their talks very short, 15 to 18 minutes sort of TED Talk, and have them taped so that there's no issues, even if you happen to be rural with bandwidth. The second one is do a Q&A live right after the event and do on demand. Because if you can hit all three, you've pretty much got it sold. That's it.
Thanks, Dallas.
Thank you. Okay.
You shared a number of things there with us, some good reminders. So people buy from people, the value of networking, short and concise messages, and live Q&A. I think all of those are really important topics that we need to remember. Mike, your hand's up.
Sure, thanks, and I'll keep it quick because I know we're bouncing up against time. So with what was just shared, I would say from the agribusiness side, for any of the show organizers, you have to understand why we're coming or what's our intent to ever join a show in person or virtual. And I would think that the majority of agribusinesses would be going to a virtual or another show is either to deliver information or build a customer list somehow, some way, shape, or form. And what goes through our minds when we get all these different pitches of why to join the various virtual shows, that, you know, we just had a great big poll that showed, a great big keynote. So now I expect I'll probably see over the next few months opportunities to sponsor keynotes for $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $10,000. What goes through an agribusiness mind is, okay, I can spend the 10 with you and you're in control of bringing me people. Or I can spend the 10 myself and deliver everything that I could do virtually, with dealing with examples of zoomed out. So then create the on-demand, do all of it on my own. And in today's social media marketing, especially within the agri segment in Western Canada, you can annoy people. You can reach the point of annoyance for 10 grand of social media marketing. So I guess that's more feedback and commentary that, you know, if there's all of a sudden now a great big anchor, we're going to go find the best speakers and we're going to try sell those spots. There, you know, businesses will look at what they can do on their own, and we can go find our own.
Good. Thanks for that, Mike. Other comments? I think this is the last poll that we had. So this is your one of your last opportunities to say your piece. If you've been chewing the side of your cheek, wanting to get something off your chest, here's your opportunity. Robert and then Jeremy.
Just really quickly, I'm curious to know, we've been talking about the trade show virtual booth not being something that's successful. We've heard that from a few people around the virtual table. So I'm wondering, what are organizers doing to actually drive farmer traffic to booths?
I'm happy to speak to that one, but if anyone else wants to. So from our perspective, we really changed our focus this year, and you know, to a lot of the points here where, you know, last year we were mimicking an in-person trade show, and so we had about 12 hours of content for 4 or 5 days in a row, and we were spending all our time persuading farmers to invest all their time in a big chunk of time. And so what we're doing this year is approaching it very differently, where we've spread out our event days throughout the year. And so basically our foundation is that we are starting to ask farmers for smaller chunks of their time throughout the year rather than at once. And we just, you know, from what we learned last year and you know, from what I'm hearing today, it sounds like we're on the right track from what other people are thinking too, is that we just can't ask for too much of their time at once. We're making everything available on demand to them and trying to do it in a way that suits them better than we did it last year. So there was that learning for us. And then we are approaching, and then, you know, we are promoting this almost more than our in-person events, because it just is going to take that little extra bit to, you know, talk about, in the cases of our outdoor shows, we know most farmers get pretty excited about them. They're pretty unique, they're pretty cool. And in this one, so it's just a little bit more trying to reach them digitally through our different communications channels, and social is a big part of that as well. So trying to start the conversation on social and then move it into the digital community that we're creating.
Good, thanks for sharing that, Amanda. Is there anyone else that wants to answer or comment to Robert's question before we go to Jeremy?
I can maybe jump in there, Lauren, just provide a little bit of perspective. Obviously, for a lot of people here, me from Ag in Motion over the last 7 years. And to Amanda's point, right? I mean, having that shift from a traditional show, right, to a virtual space was a big change for us and a big change for the industry, right? Not understanding what the virtual space would look like, how we would utilize the tools, available at that time to try to mimic what we were all so accustomed to, right? We're a social group. We want to do things face to face. And that was it was almost a letdown, right? It's almost like a death in the family to try to shift into this new medium and think differently about the ways we want to engage with our producers and with the industry. And, that was a challenge, right? And that was a big challenge for people to get over that fact that now we have to adapt and move into this new medium, right? With an understanding or not an understanding of how long this is going to, be. So, to that point, things maybe didn't work well, but those lessons have been learned. And I think a lot of people here, how those lessons, are moving forward in a positive direction. Mike, you make a great point about, utilizing mediums, and controlling the messaging yourself, right? Building small groups within your localized markets or retailers or different groups, right? And having those conversations face to face or maybe in small groups with people. I've heard a lot of great successes within the industry now, shifting into the industry and not being a part of Ag in Motion to using those strengths within your business, right? The people that you have within at the ground level, right? To have those communications and conversations virtually. Keeping the meetings really short, right? Having a morning coffee, maybe just saying hello, talking about the weather. Sometimes it can be a really simple connection to just continue those conversations, keep those relationships ongoing through these tough times. There's a lot of opportunity there. And then when I think about some of the other, lessons we can learn from the industry and, being in this role now with Sherpa Marketing, I think to some of the things we can learn as an industry as a whole too, on how we communicate from an information perspective to our industry, right? You think to the automotive industry and some of the ways that they launch, let's say the new Ford Bronco that's coming out, right? People in the automotive industry know that is coming out. There's a lot of buzz, right? Because it's new, it's interesting. We tend to kind of forget that. And I think we've had a hard time as an industry, switching gears into a digital space and trying to provide that information that growers are really seeking at a physical space in a virtual medium. So I think to, different ways that, me as a person, as a car buyer, use different mediums like YouTube and Twitter and just the internet in general, right, to make that buying decision. I think there's some lessons learned there to look elsewhere as well into, various other industries that, we have a lot of similarities to some of the aspects that are working really well, as they continue to engage with their customer base through COVID.
Excellent points, Dan. Okay, Jeremy, your hand must be getting tired. It's been up for a while, so we'll let you go.
Yeah, it's all good. I just had an interesting perspective, and it went back to what Roberta had said about people being zoomed out and kind of tired of digital. When we started this, there was 73 people that were on this Zoom call that all have a stake in the future of trade shows and all have a stake in the future in agriculture. And now we're at 50. We couldn't even keep everybody's attention for an hour and a half. And we're going to ask farmers to do the same thing. Might be tough. It was just an interesting perspective. I've been watching people drop and thinking, here is the leaders in agriculture, in agri-marketing, and agribusiness all coming together to brainstorm, and we can't even stick it out for an hour and a half. And we're going to expect farmers to do that virtually. We're going to have some damn good content to do that.
Okay, Mike, I think that's a clap, not a hand. So on that note, Robert, we better turn it over to you before anyone else turns it off.
Yeah, so we're running a little bit late for time. So thanks for everyone for sticking in there. And it has been an interesting conversation. Just a quick recap here. I'll pass it over to Amanda and Lauren after I've said a couple of mine. So we heard a lot of good conversations from the farmers today. So Roberta, Anchor, and Henry, thank you very much. Smaller niche events seems to be a thing that's of interest for many of us. We still need some big attraction to pull farmers into an event regardless of the size. We heard from Henry earlier on that a la carte approach, that if it is a larger show, being able to go ahead earlier and choose the topics that he is interested in, potentially even choosing the booths and the connections that he wants to make. The idea that giving the participating farmers the opportunity to choose their own breakout rooms to be with their peers. So there is a networking component. Obviously an agri-marketer, agribusiness can be part of that group as well, but as opposed to going into a group that you're not necessarily aware who else is in there. And then finally is the opportunity to access speakers personally. I think this was David's comment, who you wouldn't normally be able to access. And so if there are farmer topics, farmer speakers that allow Roberta, the Kurtz, and Henry to actually have a conversation with someone that they normally wouldn't be able to, I think is a really interesting and unique opportunity for virtual specifically. So I'll start with Lauren, actually. Do you have any final recaps that you're super excited about?
Sure. So I had some preconceived ideas and notions. I'm going to throw those all out the window. Mike, I have 3 quick points that I kind of started as I wrote down some points here. Amanda mentioned sitting at the table. So I thought that was, sitting at the virtual table, that was a key takeaway for me. How we're branding and setting expectations. So calling it a conference or an event versus a virtual trade show. I thought that was neat. And then, you know, I think lastly, this is a new opportunity. I don't see virtual trade shows. So I have to rebrand already. I don't see virtual events or conferences going away. And so just finding how, you know, to David's and Robert's last point, how we can get more out of it or something additional, and how we coexist with the physical trade shows, I think is a challenge for all of us.
And Amanda.
I'll agree. So I came in here thinking I thought I know where this would go, but this is why we have brainstorms, because we don't have the answer. So I really appreciate the farmers giving their insights as well, and to all of you who are organizing and hosting the events, just talking about what can go better and where we might go in the future. And to agree with what Lauren said, just really taking out the word trade show, because it's something different, and just thinking about what's positive about it. So I really enjoyed the comments from a few people on, there are no bad spots. We're going to be present, but not perfect. So just, try it. So if you're in, if your company's not ready, just give it a try. See how you can make this virtual experience work for your business and the farmers, and just take that focused approach and just try to segment where you can. So lots of little learnings and a different way to think about it. So I definitely appreciate all the conversation we had, and everyone, really, really contributed. So I appreciate that.
Thanks, Amanda. Thanks, Lauren. Thanks to our Glacier Farm Media sponsor as well. I want to thank each of you for participating. Specifically, Roberta, Kurt, and Henry really wanted to get the farmers' insight. Amanda, at the beginning of this, going down this road of CAMA providing an opportunity for the membership to come together, said, I only really want to hear from the farmers and what their needs are, because ultimately we do everything for the farmers. So thank you to the three of you for participating. It's up to each of us to review, improve, adjust our plans to ensure we're offering a trade show experience in whatever form that is valuable to the farmer. We learned that every farmer is different, as we already knew. We know that agribusiness is different, their needs are different. So we look forward to see how the industry meets this challenge throughout the year and beyond. So thanks, everyone. Hope you've got some good takeaways here, and we can have great virtual experiences moving forward. Bye now.